This is Gemara Kesubos Daf Beis, and as we begin a new Masechta, as always, we begin with a tefillah that the same level of excitement, freshness that always accompanies a new Masechta, a new limud, especially after a difficult one like Yevamis. That freshness, that excitement should carry us through, not just through Daf Beis and Daf Gimel, but together through the entire Masechta. We should always try to keep on being encouraging and mechazik yourself, thinking back how excited we were to start Daf Beis, and Amir Hashem, that should help us through the Masechta and ultimately through the Seder and through Shas. So we start the Masechta, Beis Amud Aleph, says the Mishnah, Besula nis'eis liyayim haravi. A Besula, a woman who never had relations before in her life, nis'eis, she should get married b'yayim haravi on Wednesday. V'almana, a woman that was previously married, liyayim chamishi, literally almana is a widow, gets married on Thursday. So we have interesting, the Mishnah tells us when should weddings happen. A Besula, an unmarried woman never had relations on Wednesday, a widow on Thursday. Why? Says the Mishnah. Twice a week, the Batei Dinim, the courts, would sit in the large cities. Many of us hopefully will remember this back from the Gemara Megillah. We learned in the Gemara Megillah as well that was the reason why we said that the Megillah is allowed to be read earlier, because they used to go to the big cities. When would they go to the big cities? They would go there on Monday and Thursday, because B'mayim b'Shabbos, twice a week, the Batei Dinim, the court cases, the courts would sit in the big cities, B'Yom Sheni, B'Yom Chamishi, on Monday and Thursday. So therefore, why does a Besula, an unmarried girl, a virgin, literally get married on Wednesday? Because the courts sit on Monday and Thursday, and therefore what? She'im hayaloi tainis besulim, that if he has a claim of besulim, if he has a claim regarding whether his new wife is indeed a virgin, is indeed one who never had relations, hayamashkim lebezdin, will get up early and go to Bezdin. Let's explain for a moment exactly what's going on here in the Mishnah. A man gets married to a woman, the woman is assumed to be a woman who never had relations before, she was never married before, and therefore they get married. Beautiful. What should happen at the Bia Rishayna, the first act of intercourse? What should happen there should be dam besulim. There should be blood, there should be an indication that she was indeed a besula, she was indeed a virgin, never had relations. Let's say not. Let's say they have relations and you realize, wait, there's no dam. Wait, there's something weird going on. That's a problem. That's a problem. First of all, the husband's upset. This is not what we agreed upon. But more importantly, perhaps, Rashi over here points out, why are we wanting that the next morning they go right away to Bezdin? Let them get married on Sunday, and whenever there's an issue, you go to Bezdin. Why do we have to have the wedding the night before, so the next morning right away, Thursday morning, they could get them and go to Bezdin? Rashi says, on the first narrow line, let's read this together, the reason we made the Takana to get married on Wednesday, so that if he has a claim against her virginity, against the fact that she is a Besula, Yashkin LeBezdin, by Kaisa love, while he's still angry, while he's still ready, he should quickly go to Bezdin. Why? Because if we leave some time in between, says Rashi, we're afraid he might calm down and he might say, okay, we'll just stay married. So great, beautiful, let them stay married. Says Rashi, no, we're nervous. Maybe she was mezaneh. Maybe in the time period between the Kedushin and the Irisin, of course, back Bizman Chazal, they didn't do it all together. They did Kedushin. The betrothal was at one date, and then the Nisuin, the actual marriage, was at a later date. So we're nervous that what might happen, that maybe she was Mizaneh, and therefore what? V'nesra love. She's forbidden to him. That's the concern. So therefore, we need to make a scenario that in the event there's an issue, he'll get up first thing in the morning, and what will he do? He'll be able to go to Bezdin. We don't want the scenario that he'll have to wait 2-3 days. If he waits 2-3 days, we're nervous, he might not end up going to Bezdin. And Rashi concludes with the obvious question that the Mishnah said that the Batei Din in the court sit on 2 days, Monday and Thursday. So we get married on Wednesday night. And Rashi concludes, don't worry, the Gemara is going to discuss, get married on Sunday night. And then Monday morning, you could go to Bezdin, and we'll get there in the Gemara. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yudah, Amar Shmuel, Amru Besulin Eseis L'Yom Ravi. Says Rav Yosef, the name of Rav Yudah, the name of Shmuel. Why does a Besula, an unmarried woman, a virgin, get married on Wednesday? Lefi Shashaninu, because we learned. Higias Mam V'Lo Nisu. We learned the following brayso. Let's say they did Kedushin at one date, and then they made a date to do the Nisuin, and that date comes, and they didn't get married. What happens? the wife is allowed to eat mishaloi from her husband. They're supposed to be married now, and from Truma. Again, what's the case? The case is Kedushin and Nisuin. Erisin and Nisuin is at two different dates. So let's just play out a simple case. They have Erisin on January 1st. They say a year from now, January 1st the next year, we're going to do Nisuin. Comes the next January 1st, woman's ready, got the gown, everything's ready to go. He doesn't show up. The wedding is off for the time being. It's postponed, we'll call it. Says the Gemara, from that date, she is allowed to eat from his food. He has to support her. They're supposed to be married, number one. Number two, if he's a Kayin, she's allowed to eat Truma at this point. That's din number one of this Brisa. Now, what does this have to do with us? Explains the Brisa further. Let's say January 1st comes out on Sunday. Again, a year later, they did Eris, and a year later comes the date of the Nisuin, the date of the wedding, and it's a Sunday. You would think, if they don't get married, he has to feed her. Therefore the Mishnah learns, no. You're supposed to get married on Wednesday. So if Sunday comes, the prospective wedding date, and they don't get married, why? Because the husband's waiting for Wednesday, like the Mishnah taught him. Then in those interim days, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, he does not have to feed her. He does not give her Truma. Why? Because the reason he's waiting is for the Takana of the Chachamim. So says Rav Yosef Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, the reason we need to know that weddings are on Wednesday, that if the prospective wedding day comes on a Sunday, he's allowed to wait until Wednesday. Says the Gemara, and I'm sure many people are wondering something is very funny over here. Let's actually speak out what's about to happen. The Mishnah said the reason to get married on Wednesday. Why? In case he's nervous that she wasn't a basula, in case he didn't find the dam basulim, in case he's nervous she's not a virgin, he'll go to bed the next morning. So what's the Gemara saying? Why do you get married on a Wednesday? What's the question? The Mishnah told us the reason. And now you're coming up with a whole new, what's going on? Omar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, Mari Davram, which we know, Mari Davram, master of Avram, Lashon of a Shvua, Tali Tanya, but Delay Tanya. You're saying a Mishnah, you're saying is dependent upon something that was not taught. Our Mishnah, the reasoning in our Mishnah you're saying is dependent upon a Brisa. Says Gemara, what do you mean? Hey Tanya. Tanya. What? Our Mishnah is a Bryce is taught, and that Bryce is not taught. Hey Tanya. They're both taught. They're both statements. What's the problem? We have a Mishnah. We have a Brysa. They're both written and recorded statements. Says Gemara, no. This is the question. Elatoli Tanya de Mefarish Taima. The Mishnah had the reason in the Mishnah. You're telling a Mishnah with the reason explained in the Mishnah. B'Tanya Deloy Mefarish Taima, and you're explaining it with a Brysa that we don't necessarily know the reason. We don't yet know the reason why. If the day comes on Sunday and he says we're not getting married until Wednesday, we don't yet know the reason why that he does not have to support her. Because that's our Mishnah. Our Mishnah had the reason. So we're saying our Mishnah is because of that Mishnah? That makes no sense. Our Mishnah is because of our Mishnah. Why do you get married on Wednesday? Because of Tainus Basulim. Nothing to do with the fact if the wedding day comes. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ella yitmar achi yitmar. This is what Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel meant to say. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Why does the Basula get married on Wednesday like our Mishnah? Very simple. Why? Because if there's an issue, they'll go to Bezdin the next morning. Beautiful. Asks the Gemara the question that we pointed out in the Mishnah. 1 minute. Why don't they get married on Sunday and then you can go to Bezdin on Monday? Why is the Mishnah honing in on Wednesday? Sunday and Wednesday should be the same thing. The night before the next morning's Bezdin on Monday or Thursday. Answers the Gemara, you know why you don't get married on a Sunday? The reason is that the Chachamim were careful. The Chachamim were concerned on the honor, on the dignity of a B'nai Yisrael, of a Jewish girl. That what? They wanted to ensure they wanted to make sure that every wedding was an appropriate wedding. That you're not going to have a husband just shows up and say, okay, let's get married here. Wait, where's the food? Where's the wine? Where's the guests? Where's the music? No, we were we're concerned about a B'nai Yisrael, a Jewish girl. Therefore, we want to make sure that the very bare minimum, there's a preparation period for every wedding of 3 days. Echad b'Shabbos, Sheni b'Shabbos, Shlishi b'Shabbos. Revi'ah Kainsa, and you get married on Wednesday. So again, really from the din in our Mishnah, could you have gotten married on a Sunday? Yes. Comes on the Chacham with a new takana. Don't get married on Sunday. You know why? because we're nervous that a guy is not going to prepare appropriately for the wedding, so you get married on a wedding. Now continues the Brisa, continues Shmuel, I should say, now that you said the reason is that we're concerned for the dignity of Bnei Yisrael, that other teaching that we know about, which teaching, that if the time of the wedding comes, they don't get married, he has to support her. What happens now if the time comes on a Sunday? Wait, why don't you get married on Sunday? You're allowed to get married on Sunday. Sunday's the day before Monday. Why aren't you getting married on a Sunday? Can get married. Why not? Because of this new takana, this new shaktu, this new takana that everyone prepares for a wedding for 3 days. Therefore, he wouldn't have to feed her. Because the reason he's not getting married on a Sunday is not because he doesn't want to. It's because takana chachamim, the Chazal made an enactment not to get married until Wednesday. Lefikach, so that's din number 1 of Shmuel. Now, piggybacking off of din number 1 of Shmuel, that if a husband delays for the reason to prepare for the wedding for the takana, which takana? The takana to get married on a Wednesday to ensure that there's always a 3-day preparatory period before every wedding. Lefikach, therefore, din number 2, chalahu, aisha chal sahi, aisha bir sanida. Let's say the wedding day comes and he's sick, or she's sick, or she becomes an Ida, and they want to push off the wedding, and they want to push it off because they're not feeling well, or other scenarios. Says the Gemara, that's very similar. An oines, an unavoidable mishap, a sickness. Okay, in the world of Corona, we certainly can understand this. The chas and the kala, someone came down with Corona, and they didn't want to get married right now. Says the Gemara, that's similar to pushing off the wedding for a takana of the Rabbanan. It's not that you don't want to get married. It's an external force. There's an external force saying, Chachamim say, make sure to prepare for 3 days, and now there's external force saying we're not feeling well. So einai ma'ilala mezainis, you do not have to provide with food. Before we continue to the second lashon, let's just explain what just happened one more time for clarity purposes. We had a Mishnah, the Mishnah says, or Basula gets married on a Wednesday. We had a statement, and the statement came along and said that if the time comes to get married and you don't get married, then you have to give them food. What are we doing over here? Says the Gemara, let me explain. The Mishnah says Basula gets married on a Wednesday. Now there's an unspoken question, why not Sunday? Answers the Gemara with a critical din, a din derabbanan called shaktu. The Chazal were concerned with the dignity of a Bnei Yisrael, of a Jewish girl. They wanted to make sure there's always 3 days to prepare. So don't get married on Sunday. There's no refrigeration. You can't have food sit over Shabbos. Get married on a Wednesday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Prepare. You get married on a Wednesday. Now that we know the reason you're waiting till Wednesday is because of the din derabbanan, what happens if the date of the wedding, you did Eris and the date of the wedding comes a year later on a Sunday and you don't get married? Why? Not because you don't want to, not because he doesn't want to. The reason you don't get married is because it's the kind of Rabbanan. You're not obligated to support the wife. If you're a kohen, she does not get truma. And similarly, din number 2 that extends off of this is if someone is sick as well, you do not get supported. So according to this lashon, according to Rav Yosef, one din comes out very clear that if there's an einis, an unavoidable mishap, whether it's an einis of a takanah d'Rabbanan, whether it's an einis of a sickness, you do not get food. Says the Gemara, and there are those that learned the previous exchange of the Gemara as a question and answer. What is the din if he gets sick and that's why they don't get married? Now it's a fundamental question. Sometime what's the reason over there? Mishum the honest. It's an unavoidable mishap. Honest. So maybe it's the same thing. Why don't you get married on Sunday because you're waiting for the takana to wait till Wednesday to prepare the food? Similarly over here, why don't you get married? Because you have a similar einis. So therefore you not have to support her with food. Or perhaps Hasamanis with the kanta de katina de Rabbanan. Wait, there's a fundamental difference. There, what was unavoidable mishap? It was a din de Rabbanan. It was a rabbinic enactment that's stopping you. Hachalai. Here it wasn't the reason. So fundamental question, what is a sickness? Asks the Gemara. Is a sickness equatable to the takana de Rabbanan? It's an einis or no? An takana de Rabbanan einis is a different type of unavoidable mishap. Says the Gemara, 5 lines to the bottom, if you're going to tell me that if you get sick, you do get food, it's not the same level of oines like Takana d'Rabbanan, you don't have to feed. But if you get sick, that's your problem. So you have to support your wife. Chalsehi mahu. Oh, now we can start splitting hairs. That's if the husband gets sick, so he stops the wedding. What if she gets sick? Is it the same thing? Do we say Matzi Amar La Noha Kamina? He can tell his wife, hello, I'm waiting here. I'm under the chuppah. It's your problem that you're sick. So I don't have to give you food right now. Or perhaps Matzi Amar La Nistab Chasadeyu. She can say to him, very good, you're there, but I'm sick. and it's your bad luck. Nistabcha sadeu. Look at Rashi in the bottom. Rashi says, like a river overflowing. Kolaimar, meaning to say, Kolaimar always means it's not Bashib Shat. Mazlecha garam. The woman says it's your mazel that caused the fact that I got sick. So says the Gemara, what's the din in that case? Ve'im tib Zolaimer, 2 lines to the bottom, Amro lei. Nistabcha sadeu, that she could say, yeah, it's your bad luck. Pir sanida ma'u. Wait, now what happens if it's not a sickness? Sickness, you could say, she could say to him, it's your bad luck. What if she becomes a nida? So b'shas vesta loiti ba'ilach. There's no question if it's at her regular time of seeing. So of course, what's the question? The question is, as we turn over to Beis and Beis, there's no question. Of course, she can't say it's your bad luck. What's bad luck? This is your normal time that you see every month. So it's your fault, and therefore he does not have to give her food. You know what the question is? When it's not at the regular time for her to see her menstrual period. What's the din? Do we say since it's not at the regular time of seeing, therefore she could say to him, it's your mazel, it's your bad luck that I saw this random period at a random time. Or perhaps it does happen that women see random periods, kishas vesta dummy, and therefore it's like a vest. So now in this second lashon of the Gemara, numerous questions building upon each other. Is the sickness the same level of oinus like the takana d'Rabbanan not to get married? What about his sickness? Then we go, what about her sickness? What about becoming a nida? What about becoming a nida not at the right time? Says the Gemara, Pashat Rav Achai. Rav Achai answers 6 lines from the top of Beis and Beis. Higiazman v'loy nisu. If the time comes, the wedding day comes, they set the date, it comes v'loy nisu, they don't get married. Oichleis mishaloi v'oichleis b'tshuma. Says the Brisa, you have to support your wife. What's the wording? Says Rav Achai, go particular, go clear. Loy nasu like etanu. It doesn't say nasu, which refer to the husband. Eloloi nisu. It says it with a yud, referring to the both of them, including the woman. Hey Chidami, what's the case? So the Brisa clearly is honing in that there's a case where the woman prevented the marriage, and yet, what did the Brisa say? She's going to get food. Says the Gemara, hey Chidami, what's the case? If she stops and says, I'm not ready to get married. So of course she doesn't get food. It's your problem. You don't want to get married. Elalav, what must the case be? The case is that she was an oines, ki agavna, and yet, what does it say? And yet, even though it's because of an oines, you still get supported. It says Rav Achai. Amar Rav Ashi, really an oines, she does not get fed. And really, what are we talking about? We're talking about the fact that he stopped the wedding. And it should have said nasu without the yod, referring to that the husband stopped the wedding. So why did it say nisu? I did tani reisha b'didhi, tani nami sifa b'didhi. Once it talks about the reisha from her perspective, it talks about the sifa in her perspective and well. So what comes out, let's just do a quick math over here before we continue. What comes out is that Rav Yosef, which was the first lashon on Amud Aleph, and Rav Ashi, who is the final din over here, says the Gemara that he, the husband, does not have to support his wife unless he deliberately stops the wedding. Whereas according to Rav Achai, who is the second sheet over here, what did Rav Achai tell us? Rav Achai says not the way. Rav Achai says no, that even if it's an oinus, the opposite extreme, the husband had nothing to do with it. It was an oinus, he couldn't avoid it. Still, the husband has to, support his wife. So fascinating discussion that when the wedding day comes and someone holds back and prevents the wedding date, do you have to support your wife? We have Rav Yosef and we have Rav Ashi on one side saying the only time the husband has to support if he deliberately causes it, and Rav Achai on the other side saying no, he always has to support his wife even if it was an oinus that caused the wedding not to happen. Says the Gemara, Omar Rava. Now this discussion of Rava is a direct result of the previous discussion in the Gemara. But now this Rav is going to say a din. It's important to hone in on what Rav is saying, as this is really going to go all the way into tomorrow's daf tomorrow. Says Rava, Ule'inyan gitin einoikein. Get is the opposite of that which we just said. Says the Gemara, Alma, what does that mean? Because of Rava, what does Rava hold? Ein oinus begin. Says the Gemara, there's no claim of oinus begin. In the previous discussion, we have a machlekes with Rav Ashi with Rav Yosef and Rav Chai in the middle. But at some level, what do we see? At some level, we saw that if a husband comes and says, I wanted to get married, it just wasn't my fault, it was an unavoidable mishap, we believe his taina. We listen to him, and we say, oh, it was an inus? It was unavoidable? Okay, you don't have to feed your wife. Normally, you have to feed your wife when the day comes. But if it was an unavoidable mishap, you don't have to feed her. Comes along Rav, and Rav says, that's by Kiddushin, that's by Nisuin. But by Get, it's not that way. When it comes to Gin, as we'll see in a moment, if a husband says it was unavoidable, there's nothing I could do, the get still is going to work. There's no taina of Einis Begin. You cannot say it's not my fault. And let's go into this. Let's figure out exactly what this means. Says the Gemara, Menali the Rava. Where does Rava get this from? About 15 lines to the top of Bezim and Beis. 3 lines after the 2 dots. First one on line is lay. Where does Rava come from? Ilema. Now we're going to have about 4 attempts to figure out the source of Rava. Ilema. If he came from a Mishnah. Someone gives his wife a get. It says, here's your get. If I do not return from now until 12 months, he goes on a business trip and he says, if I don't come home within the next 12 months, we're divorced. What happens? Unfortunately, Rahman al-Islam, he dies. He's nifter 6 months later. So now we know for sure he's not coming within 12 months. What was the Tanai? If I don't come in 12 months, it's a get. He's certainly not coming. Says the Brisa, ain't no get. It's not a get. Why is it not a get? Explains the Gemara. Because he died. But what's the obvious implication? Is a get. If he was sick, he went overseas and he got sick and he didn't come within 12 months. You know why? Not because he didn't want to, because he was sick. He couldn't physically come. What's the implication? That it would be a get. We see the fact that he's saying it's not my fault. It was an inus. I was sick in bed. We don't care when it comes to getting a get would be chal. Says the Gemara, no raya. Really, I'll tell you, get, even if you get sick, it's not a get. You could say inus. And the Bryce is just teaching us a different chedish. Then get lachra misa. The Bryce is honing in on misa. You know why? To teach us you can't have a get that's chal. The get cannot work after his death. That's what it's teaching us, but it's not talking about sickness at all. Ask the Gemara and get lachra misa. That's what the Bryce is teaching us. The first part of that Bryce taught that already. Someone says, here's a get if I die. Here's a get if I die from this sickness. Here's a get that should be chal after I die. Says the Brisa Loyamer Klom. It doesn't work. So what do we see? We already know the din that a get cannot be chal after one's death. It says the Gemara, no, it really is coming to teach us there's no get after death. The first part of the Brisa, the Reisha taught this already. No, it's coming to teach us not to like the Rabbanan that argued on that first part of the Mishnah. Titania, we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Seinu, say the Rabbanan actually allowed him to get married. Says the Gemara, so that's what it's coming to exclude. V'amrina, now we explain Man Rabbi Seinu, Rav Yudah, Shmuel, Beidina the Shari Mishcha was the Bezdin that permitted oil a certain case over there. So says the Gemara, you can't bring a proof from case number 1, the case of Reza Gitacham Labasi Mekam Hashem B'Sachaydesh, because that's a case specifically about mace. Why did he just ain't get Lachar Misa? So in fact, we couldn't learn it from the Reisha because the Reisha is not conclusive. The Rabbanan argue, and therefore it's not a raya at all. It's the statement of Rava whether one could say it's an it's unavoidable when it comes to Gein. Says the Gemara, who are these Rabbanan? In the aforementioned Brisa, that the time in the shtar, the time in the get shows that it works. Meaning, what did the Brisa say? Someone gives a get and he wants it to be chal after his death. So said the Brisa doesn't work. The Gemara just explained, but the Rabbanan said it does work. How can it work? There's no get after someone dies. Explains the Gemara, you know why? Because there's a zman, there's a time in the get. And since there's a time in the get, that shows us, what does that show us? That shows us that he really wants the get to be chal now. He really wants it. We'll take 1 second, we're running late. Rashi, towards the end of the narrow lines, Rashi explains that he didn't write the time for no reason. He wrote it to show it I want it to be chal now. And therefore, even though he did not write mehayoim, it says if he wrote mehayoim, it's if he wrote he wants to get the chal today, not after he dies, because he wrote the date inside of it. But now we're back to square number 1. What is the source for the sin of Rava? The din of Rava that you cannot say eines, you cannot claim it was unavoidable when it comes to Gin. Says the Gemara, Elami Seifa. Comes from the Seifa, that the Seifa says says, that get. If you die within the 12 months, it is a get. Now we have the same implication that we said before. Mace, but now we say it the opposite. Says Gemara, it's not only a case of death, even if it's just sickness, that would be the same din. And the Gemara retorts the same question. No, maybe it's saying specifically a case of Misa, so you cannot bring a proof from there. Attempt number 3. Someone says to his wife, if I don't come home for 30 days, it should be a get. Also, at the end of 30 days, and he comes, and what happens? And the bridge is closed. The bridge is open. He can't get there. He's trying to get there. It's the end of 30 days, but you know what happens? The river crossing stops him. He can't get over the river, so he's sitting there and he's yelling, he's sitting and saying to his wife, I don't want to divorce you. I'm right here. I told you if I don't come in 30 days, and I'm right here. I just can't cross the river. Amar Shmuel, Lav Shmei Maisa. Lamaisa, you didn't come. You didn't come. Why didn't you come? It's an Eines. What do we see clearly? We see like Rava that one cannot claim it's an unavoidable mishap. Therefore, that's the raya to Rava. Says the Gemara, no raya. But Dilma unsa the shchiach shiny. Maybe this case is different because it's a classical unavoidable mishap. It's not a regular Eines. You should have known that the bridge has hours. You should have known you weren't going to be able to cross the river. The Kim di last New You could have included the Tanai in this. You could have said, if I can't cross the river, it's a normal case. The fact that you didn't, it's your fault. So maybe there's no raya from this case. Elo Rava. So where did Rava get this din? The din that you cannot claim an unavoidable mishap by a get at any time you said, here's a get. If I don't come in 12 months, I don't come in 30 days. And you want to say, I'm trying to come. I just can't for whichever reason of a oinus, I'm sick, etc. You know why? Svara dinavshei ka'amar. Rava is saying a svara, a logic. Why? Mishum snios, mishum prutzais. Because of the tznuos, mishum because of the prutzais. What does that mean? Says the Gemara in the last line. Mishum tznuos, Rava was concerned for the women that are overly pious. If you're going to say what? You're going to say it's not a get. You're going to say the fact that you said it's an Eines is a good reason, and since it's a good reason, the get is not chal. For example, someone says, here's a get if I don't come within 12 months, and then he says, I couldn't come because I was sick. So we'll believe him, let's say. We'll believe him, and it's not a good get. You know what we're worried about as we turn over tomorrow's Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, we're worried, Zinin, Deloy Anis, really it's not an Eines. V'svara D'Anis, and she's going to think it is an Eines. And you know what's going to happen? She's not going to get remarried to Magna V'Yasva. She's going to stay in Aguna for the whole life. Because we're concerned, says Rava, that she's going to be overly pious, even though she's allowed to get remarried, but she's going to be overly pious. Therefore, says Rava, we don't listen when someone says Eines with regard to gain. And similarly, says the Gemara in Beis Gimel Amud Aleph, 2 lines down, Umisham prutzais, for a woman who is not the opposite of a tznuah, a woman who is brazen, a woman who doesn't listen. If you're going to say that it's not a get, zinin da anis. Really, it is an anis. Va'amran, she's going to say loy anis. Va'azlo mitzvah v'nimsa get batel b'nem mamzeirim. She's not going to listen. She's a brutza, and really, there's no get. She's a married woman. But she's saying, no, it really is a good get. You know why? It wasn't an anis. He's lying, and she's going to go get married, and it's going to cause mamzeirim. And that is the reason that Rava says misham snuis, misham prutzais. We don't listen when someone says with regard to gin, it was an anis. It's unavoidable. We don't listen to such a taina when it comes to gain. It determines whether you listen to the tanai or not, whether you came or not. And as much as this whole story began, that when it came to kedushin nisuin, it depended upon the machlekes Rav Achai, Rav Yosef, Rav Ashi. There is at some level of taina of oinis that if someone says I didn't get married today, you know why? Because I'm waiting for the takana derabbanan to get married on Wednesday. He would not have to support his wife, and she would not give truma. We'll pick it up from here, Mir Tashem, in the next year.